Chapter 79. Hypnotism and its Dangers.
Be on guard. In these days when skepticism and infidelity so often appear in a scientific garb, we need to be guarded on every hand. Through this means our great adversary is deceiving thousands and leading them captive according to his will. The advantage he takes of the sciences which pertain to the human mind, is tremendous. Here, serpent-like, he imperceptibly creeps in to corrupt the work of God. This entering in of Satan through the sciences is well devised. Through the channel of phrenology, psychology. Note, in appraising fairly this use of the word psychology employed by the author, the reader should take into account its connotations and associations in the 1850s through the 1880s, often being linked with mesmerism, or hypnosis, and phrenology. Returning to the text. Through the channel of phrenology, psychology, and mesmerism, he comes more directly to the people of this generation and works with that power which is to characterize his efforts near the close of probation. The minds of thousands have thus been poisoned and led into infidelity. While it is believed that one human mind so wonderfully affects another, Satan, who is ready to press every advantage, insinuates himself and works on the right hand and on the left. And while those who are devoted to these sciences laud them to the heavens because of the great and good works which they affirm are wrought by them, they little know what a power for evil they are cherishing, but it is a power which will yet work with all signs and lying wonders, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. Mark the influence of these sciences, dear reader, for the conflict between Christ and Satan is not yet ended. Neglect of prayer leads men to rely on their own strength and opens the door to temptation. In many cases, the imagination is captivated by scientific research, and men are flattered through the consciousness of their own powers. The sciences which treat of the human mind are very much exalted. They are good in their place. Note, see explanatory note on pages 720 and 721. We will be reading that explanatory note involving phrenology and mesmerism shortly. Now returning to the text. They are good in their place, but they are seized upon by Satan as his powerful agents to deceive and destroy souls. His arts are accepted as from heaven, and he thus receives the worship which suits him well. The world, which is supposed to be benefited so much by phrenology and animal magnetism, never was so corrupt as now. Through these sciences, virtue is destroyed and the foundations of spiritualism are laid. Mind control originated by Satan. The theory of mind controlling mind was originated by Satan to introduce himself as the chief worker, to put human philosophy where divine philosophy should be. Of all the errors that are finding acceptance among professedly Christian people, none is a more dangerous deception, none more certain to separate man from God than is this. Innocent though it may appear, if exercised upon patience, it will tend to their destruction, not to their restoration. It opens a door through which Satan will enter to take possession both of the mind that is given up to be controlled by another, and of the mind that controls. Satan hypnotized Adam and Eve. Satan tempted the first Adam in Eden, and Adam reasoned with the enemy, thus giving him the advantage. Satan exercised his power of hypnotism over Adam and Eve, and this power he strove to exercise over Christ. But after the word of Scripture was quoted, Satan knew that he had no chance of triumphing. Tamper not with hypnotism. Men and women are not to study the science of how to take captive the minds of those who associate with them. This is the science that Satan teaches. We are to resist everything of the kind. We are not to tamper with mesmerism and hypnotism, the science of the one who lost his first estate and was cast out of the heavenly courts. Warning to a physician who favored hypnosis. I am so weighed down in your case that I must continue to write to you, lest in your blindness you will not see where you need to reform. I am instructed that you are entertaining ideas with which God has forbidden you to deal. I will name these as a species of mind cure. You suppose that you can use this mind cure in your professional work as a physician. In tones of earnest warning the words were spoken, "Beware, beware where your feet are placed and your mind is carried." God has not appointed you this work. The theory of mind controlling mind is originated by Satan to introduce himself as the chief worker, to put human philosophy where divine philosophy should be. No man or woman should exercise his or her will to control the senses or reason of another, so that the mind of the person is rendered passively subject to the will of the one who is exercising the control. This science may appear to be something beautiful, but it is a science which you are in no case to handle. There is something better for you to engage in than the control of human nature over human nature. I lift the danger signal. The only safe and true mind cure covers much. The physician must educate the people to look from the human to the divine. He who has made man's mind knows precisely what the mind needs. Appears valuable and wonderful. In taking up the science you have begun to advocate, you are giving an education which it is not safe for you or for those you teach. It is dangerous to tinge minds with the science of mind cure. This science may appear to you to be very valuable, but to you and to others it is a fallacy prepared by Satan. It is the charm of the serpent which stings to spiritual death. It covers much that seems wonderful, but it is foreign to the nature and spirit of Christ. This science does not lead to him who is life and salvation. At the beginning of my work, I had the mind cure science to contend with. I was sent from place to place to declare the falseness of this science into which many were entering. The mind cure was entered upon very innocently to relieve the tension upon the minds of nervous invalids. But oh, how sad were the results! God sent me from place to place to rebuke everything pertaining to this science. Tends to destruction, not restoration. I wish to speak plainly to you. You have entered upon a work which has no place in the work of a Christian physician, and which must find no place in our health institutions. Innocent though it may appear, this mind cure, if exercised upon the patients, will in its development be for their destruction, not their restoration. 2 Timothy chapter 3 describes persons who accept error, such as one mind exercising complete control over another mind. God forbids any such thing. The mind cure is one of Satan's greatest sciences, and it is important that our physicians see clearly the real character of this science, for through it great temptations will come to them. This science must not be allowed a particle of standing room in our sanitariums. God has not given one ray of light or encouragement for our physicians to take up the work of having one mind completely control the mind of another, so that one acts out the will of another. Let us learn the ways and purposes of God. Let not the enemy gain the least advantage over you. Let him not lead you to dare to endeavor to control another mind until it becomes a machine in your hands. This is the science of Satan's working. Cut loose from hypnotism, a second message of warning to the physician employing hypnotic methods. Brother and Sister N, in the name of the Lord, I ask you to remember that unless your sentiments regarding the science of mind cure are changed, unless you both understand that you are in decided need of having your own minds converted and transformed, you will be stumbling blocks, pitiful spectacles to angels and to men. The truth has had but little influence over you. It is dangerous for anyone, no matter how good a man he is, to endeavor to influence another human mind to come under the control of his mind. Let me tell you that the mind cure is a satanic science. Already you have gone far enough in it to endanger seriously your future experience. From its very first entrance into your mind until the present time, it has been a most injurious growth. Unless you can see that Satan is the mastermind who has devised this science, It will not be as easy a matter as you suppose to separate from it root and branch. The whole philosophy of this science is a masterpiece of satanic deception. For your soul's sake, cut loose from everything of this order. Every time you put into the mind of another person ideas concerning this science, that you may gain control of his mind, you are on Satan's ground, decidedly cooperating with him. For your soul's sake, break loose from this snare of the enemy. God forbids the learning or teaching of hypnosis. Neither one of you should study the science in which you have been interested. To study this science is to pluck the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God forbids you or any other mortal to learn or to teach such a science. The fact that you have had anything to do with this science ought alone to be sufficient to show you, Brother N., the inconsistency of your being the leading physician in the sanitarium. In dealing with the science of mind cure, you have been eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God has forbidden you to touch. It is now high time for you to begin to look to Jesus, and by beholding his character, become changed into the divine likeness. Cut away from yourselves everything that savors of hypnotism, the science by which satanic agencies work. Satan has great power. Further counsel to the physician and his wife. Remember that Satan has come down with great power to take possession of minds and to hold them captive under his sway. Neither of you can do anything acceptably to God unless you follow the Savior, who says, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. In all things, Christ is our example. A science fraught with peril. We do not ask you to place yourself under the control of any man's mind. The mind cure is the most awful science which has ever been advocated. Every wicked being can use it in carrying through his own evil designs. We have no business with any such science. We should be afraid of it. Never should the first principles of it be brought into any institution. Taking advantage of weakness. Fearful is the power thus given to evil-minded men and women. What opportunities it affords to those who live by taking advantage of others' weaknesses or follies. How many, through control of minds feeble or diseased, will find a means of gratifying lustful passion or greed of gain? Counsel regarding the publishing of books dealing with hypnotism. Shall its, that is, the Review and Herald Publishing Association, note, for years the Review and Herald did commercial work to keep equipment in use. Back to the sentence. Shall its managers consent to be the agents of Satan by publishing books dealing with the subject of hypnotism? Shall this leprosy be introduced into the office? Satan and his agents have been and are working diligently. Will God give his blessing to the publishing houses if they accept the deceptions of the enemy? Shall the institutions which have been kept before the people as holy unto the Lord become schools in which the workers eat the fruit of the forbidden tree of knowledge? Shall we encourage Satan in his stealthy entrance into the citadel of truth to deposit his hellish science, as he did in Eden? Are the men at the heart of the work men who cannot distinguish between truth and error? Are they men who cannot see the terrible consequences of giving influence to wrong? If you should gain millions of dollars by work of this kind, of what value is this gain when compared with the terrible loss that is incurred by giving publicity to Satan's lies? A deadly error. Satanic agencies are clothing false theories in an attractive garb, even as Satan in the Garden of Eden concealed his identity from our first parents by speaking through the serpent. These agencies are instilling into human minds that which in reality is deadly error. The hypnotic influence of Satan will rest upon those who turn from the plain word of God to pleasing fables. Danger in investigating. We have reached the perils of the last days when some, yes, many, shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Be cautious in regard to what you read and how you hear. Take not a particle of interest in spiritualistic theories. Satan is waiting to steal a march upon everyone who allows himself to be deceived by his hypnotism. He begins to exert his power over them just as soon as they begin to investigate his theories. Do not voice Satan's theories. I have been shown that we are not to enter into controversy over these spiritualistic theories because such controversy will only confuse minds. These things are not to be brought into our meetings. We are not to labor to refute them. If our ministers and teachers give themselves to the study of these erroneous theories, some will depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. It is not the work of the gospel minister to voice Satan's theories. Go steadily forward, building up the old waste places and restoring the foundations of many generations. Present the truth, sacred, sanctifying truth, and let the seducing theories of the enemy alone. Give him no ground on which to plant the seeds of these theories. I was warned to enter into no controversy over these matters. Let not our ministers or teachers or students give their lips to the repeating of the enemy's sophistry. Ministers and physicians drawn into the snare. There are doctors and ministers who have been influenced by the hypnotism exercised by the father of lies. Notwithstanding the warnings given, Satan's sophistries are being accepted now just as they were accepted in the heavenly courts. The science by which our first parents were deceived is deceiving men today. Ministers and physicians are being drawn into the snare. The past in new forms. The experience of the past will be repeated. In the future, Satan's superstitions will assume new forms. Errors will be presented in a pleasing and flattering manner. False theories, clothed with garments of light, will be presented to God's people. Thus Satan will try to deceive, if possible, the very elect. Most seducing influences will be exerted. Minds will be hypnotized. The author's experience with hypnotism. It was reported all around, that is in 1845, that the visions were the result of mesmerism, and many Adventists, that is remnants of the Adventists who had not accepted the seventh-day Sabbath, were ready to believe and circulate the report. A physician who was a celebrated mesmerizer told me that my views were mesmerism, that I was a very easy subject, and that he could mesmerize me and give me a vision. I told him that the Lord had shown me in vision that mesmerism was from the devil, from the bottomless pit, and that it would soon go there with those who continue to use it. I then gave him liberty to mesmerize me if he could. He tried for more than half an hour, resorting to different operations, and then gave it up. By faith in God, I was able to resist his influence, so that it did not affect me in the least. Spiritual magnetism. In New Hampshire, that is in 1848, we had to contend with a species of spiritual magnetism of a similar character with mesmerism. It was our first experience of this kind. No one to be passive instrument. It is not God's purpose that any human being should yield his mind and will to the control of another, becoming a passive instrument in his hands. Must be free from human enchantment. The mind cure must be free from all human enchantment. It must not grovel to humanity, but soar aloft to the spiritual, taking hold of the eternal. Explanatory note on phrenology and mesmerism. Good in their place. In 1862, Mrs. White published a lengthy article in the Review and Herald entitled Philosophy and Vain Deceit, republished in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, pages 290 to 302. It aggregates 13 pages comprised of warning against deceptions and false miracles. In that message, she stated that certain sciences would be employed by Satan to allure souls into the net that he has spread by means of spiritistic phenomena. It seems clear from the context itself and from the author's article, Science Falsely So Called, published in The Signs of the Times, November 6, 1884, that when she uses the terms phrenology, mesmerism, and animal magnetism in 1862, she did so in rather a loose and all-inclusive way, as referring to those sciences which pertain to the human mind, for so they were considered at that time. The 1884 signed statement is clearly built on the 1862 review article, employing many of its sentences, but rewording some sentences and using more precise terms. This is particularly so in those sentences of the 1862 writing in which the words phrenology and mesmerism are used. In 1862 she wrote, "Phrenology and mesmerism are very much exalted. They are good in their place, but they are seized upon by Satan as his most powerful agents to deceive and destroy souls. His arts and devices are received as from heaven, and faith in the detector, the Bible, is destroyed in the minds of thousands." Testimonies, Volume 1, page 296. In 1884 she wrote, "The sciences which treat of the human mind are very much exalted. They are good in their place, but they are seized upon by Satan as his powerful agents to deceive and destroy souls. His arts are accepted as from heaven, and he thus receives the worship which suits him well." Signs of the Times, November 6, 1884. Because this statement appears to more correctly represent the intent of the author, it is employed in this chapter. The earlier testimony statement should be appraised in the light of other statements in the chapter itself, and in consideration of the full body of statements both earlier and later from her pen on mesmerism. To show how the terms phrenology, mesmerism, and animal magnetism were employed in the mid-19th century, we list here certain works advertised at the close of a popular medical work distributed in the United States in 1852. American Phrenological Society and Miscellany, devoted to phrenology, physiology, and self-improvement, a year, $1. Chart for recording various developments, designed for phrenologists, with numerous engravings, 6 1/4 cents. Defense of Phrenology, by Dr. Andrew Boardman, a good work for skeptics and unbelievers, 50 cents. Elements of Animal Magnetism, or Process and Practical Application for Relieving Human Suffering, 12 1/2 cents. Familiar Lessons on Phrenology, designed for the use of children and youth, illustrated, 50 cents. Fascination, or the Philosophy of Charming, that is, magnetism, illustrating the principles of life, illustrated, 40 cents. Lectures on the Philosophy of Mesmerism and Clairvoyance, with instruction in its process and practical application, 25 cents. Marriage, its History and Philosophy, with a phrenological exposition of the functions for happy marriages, 37 1/2 cents. Mesmerism in India, a superior work by the celebrated Dr. Esdale, highly recommended by professional men, 50 cents. Matrimony, or Phrenology and Physiology applied to the selection of congenial companions for life, 25 cents. Psychology, or the Science of the Soul, with engravings of the nervous system, by Joseph Haddock, M.D., 25 cents. Phrenological Guide, designed for the use of students of their own characters, with numerous engravings, 12 1/2 cents. Phrenological Almanac, illustrated with numerous engravings, containing illustrated descriptions of character, 6 1/4 cents. Phrenology and the Scriptures, showing their harmony, by an author who refers to himself as Reverend John Pierpont, 12 1/2 cents. Philosophy of Electrical Psychology, by John Beauvais Dodds, 50 cents. Religion, Natural and Revealed, or The Natural Theology and Moral Bearings of Phrenology, 50 cents. The Illustrated Self-Instructor in Phrenology and Physiology, with 100 engravings and a chart,